Welcome to Perspectives in Practice. My name is Dr. Ramian Pierre, and today we are talking about navigating the federal contracting process, particularly at this time as we're entering the final 3 months of 2025 and looking ahead to 2026. I'm here with Program Manager Kenny McCombs, and I'm excited to have him share his wisdom and advice about how we might be thinking about federal contracting going forward and in this time. Kenny, thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, all things considered in this environment that we're in right now. But I'm healthy and still here and ready to keep this fight going and to get back into the game. So,
Excellent. I'm so excited and I'm glad you're well. And I appreciate that caveat, all things considered. Because we'll be talking about the uncertainty of this environment, but also how the uncertainty is a reset and is an opportunity. But let's make sure that folks understand why they should be listening to you because you have an amazing wealth of government work experience. You've been around government work most of your life. For those watching who don't know you personally and professionally, can you talk a little bit about how you first got exposed to government contracting and what keeps you in that government contracting space?
excellent. No, that's a great question right there, my man. And so, first, start off with I'm born and raised in DC. So, I'm a lifelong Washingtonian here. My mom worked at the Office of Personnel Management. And so, my summers, since I was, as far as I can remember, were spent helping her at the OPM building down on East Street, Northwest. And so I've always been involved in the federal government somehow. So that's always been. But after when I was in the Marine Corps back in 1999 in my B billet, I was a project manager over at the Marine Corps Institute. And so I led a team of senior non-commissioned officers and civilian contractors. And those were my first team of civilian contractors that I ever worked with. And our task was to redefine the sergeant's distance learning program. They would send out these huge manuals, and so our job was to turn that into an online course, which we successfully did. And then starting in 2002, I left the military and became a contractor, a DoD contracting, assisting the U.S. Navy with projects for unmanned surface air vehicle concepts and technologies, doing damage control, onboard simulation, supporting risk management, requirements definition, test planning, and analysis, all for the U.S. Navy. And so, following that down in Virginia Beach, I moved back to DC area. And then from 2008 until this past April 2025, I supported NASA headquarters, its research centers and installations across various contract vehicles, from task lead, program coordinator to project manager and program manager, finishing off leading the data and technical support services program too. And so and then in the program management role, waiting to take on another program management role back in the federal government for another agency that we have coming up here. So I am very much entrenched in this lifestyle. I think what keeps me here is uh, it's the ability to change. And what I mean by that is I was never really you're never really locked in to one agency or one mode of work when you're doing government contracting. There's all kinds of skill sets that the government needs. And so you can obviously go from any agency and they all need support from industry in various degrees. So that one there has always been there. But I always tell people, if you're in the DC area, you're either going to work for the federal government or you're going to support the federal government. And so I think for me, giving back since I left the military, the closest way for me to give back to our government and to make sure our federal government keeps going is to be a contractor as opposed to being a civil servant. So that's why I do it. Just the love of the country, really, and love for this work. So yeah, for the
Kenny,
most part.
I really appreciate that response because one, it shows a huge amount of breadth. Like you did work with the Marines, with DoD, with Navy, with NASA. It also sounds like you were on both sides of the contracting process as a civil servant working with contractors when you were in the Marines, and then being on the other side where you are the small business or the large business providing services to the federal government.
Yep.
And I also really appreciate what you said about how what keeps you in it is that variety, the ability to be able to do different types of work with different agencies over a long career while still giving back. So I want to first thank you for your service,
Thank
both
you.
military service and your work supporting the government. and I appreciate the redefinition, at least in my heart, around federal work, because the conventional wisdom is, it's the same thing. It's a bureaucracy. It's boring. It's not. There's no passion involved. But I'm hearing passion in what you're saying.
Oh, very much so. And that's one of the things that I think, if when I go outside, I have a lot of, went to college in Ohio. When I go back to Ohio, oftentimes will remind folks when I go back there that, if the federal government was in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, you all would work there or you would be supporting the federal government. So it's the same thing. It just so happens to be in the DC area. So I think a lot of people who work here, we realize that this is our job. And with anything, we want to do our jobs to the best of our abilities. And we know that this is the work that we're doing helps everyone across the nation as well as the world. I mean, that's what the U.S. We are the leader in a lot of things, and that's the reason why. It's not only the government, but it's the industry working alongside the government, and that is through contracting. So,
Fair. Now let's talk a little bit about government contracting because a lot of people think they know how government contracting works. They've heard things. In your experience, what do people tend to get wrong about government contracting, especially now in this moment as we're gearing up for 2026?
I'll take a step back first, and one of the things I've consistently said, and especially nowadays, is probably ringing more true. I think the one thing that people get wrong about the federal government, first and foremost, is that the federal government is not industry. Like the federal government was never intended to do a return on investment. We don't save money. We don't give money back. The federal government is not industry. And so we can't function like industry or expect it to function like an industry does. And I think that's what this current time feels like. There's folks who see people who are in the administration and they're really good at business. They're really good in industry. Well, maybe those skills and what they do there will translate to the federal government. And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of obstacles and challenges for people because they're realizing that the federal government we can't operate the same way industry does. Uh, and the main example I use by that is the federal government takes on $1 trillion of debt. Industry can't take on $1 trillion of debt and still be functioning. And that's a good way to think about it right there. The government doesn't make money. We don't make money. We don't do that in the federal government. Industry does. Their bottom line is to make money for their stakeholders. The U.S. is our stakeholder, so the government is there just to provide services that industry can't, that they can't make money off. That's kind of the way I tell people. So the government does all the things that industry won't do and can't make money off of. Safety, health, all those fun things. Yeah, that's what the government does. So. Uh,
I really appreciate that reframe, Kenny. I wanted to jump right into like what do people get wrong about federal contracting, but I appreciate you making us take a step back and say, hey, let's make sure everyone understands just how different federal government is in general from industry.
and
Um,
so, go ahead, please.
let's dive into that.
And
So
so, so to finish that statement, so what do I think people get wrong with federal contracting? So
yeah.
everything that the federal government does is supported by industry. Federal government can do a lot of great things, but we can't do federal government can't do everything. And so whether it's working with academic partners, or whether it's we're working with small businesses, whether it's working with large contractors, the federal government needs that support
Mm.
from industry in order to function at its best. And the way the government procures those services that it needs is through contracting. So I tell anybody, the more you know about government contracting, the better you're going to be positioned to win government contracts and to support the government. But that's until there's a new way of coming up to engaging with the government for small businesses, it's going to be through contracting. Right now, that's just how it works.
And that makes sense. So let's talk about that contracting piece because I can imagine, and actually we've at Break the Norm have talked to a number of small businesses about federal contracting, about getting involved with federal work. And what we're hearing is the same thing. Like it seems chaotic. It seems like priorities keep shifting. There's a lot of political noise. It's making a lot of small business owners nervous and actually asking themselves, is it worthwhile even pursuing federal contracts? So I'd love for you to answer that question directly. Kenny, where we were nearing the midpoint of September 2025, and right now, is it worth small businesses engaging in the federal contracting process? And if so, like, should they engage fully? Should they wait this period out until things settle down in 2026? Help give them advice. Imagine you're
Yeah.
just sitting down giving them coffee.
Okay. First thing I would say is bottom line up front, absolutely. It is absolutely the right time to be engaging in the federal government. It's the right time to be pursuing federal contracts right now. However, and let me throw a however on there. This is a time of chaos, shifting priorities, and political noise. In fact, I would argue that because of that, those three things, that makes this a better time for new entrants, whether small businesses, to get into the federal contracting because everything is mixed up right now. The analogy I like to use is a snow globe. So if you mix up a snow globe, it's all the shift, everything in the snow globe that's structured, that's the federal government. That's still going to be there. The agencies are going to be there. Now, how that stuff is going to land on them and how those priorities are going to look for those agencies, that's the unknown right now. And so I do a lot of follow a lot of military history. I look back. So let me say for historical context, for an example, you look at where we were April 2020, which is not too long ago, when COVID first presented us with chaos, shifting priorities, and political noise. That's very much the way we were in 2020. No one knew what was going to happen. Now, fast forward to right now, you look at the given that the mass exodus of the federal employees that have left due to that deferred resignation program, the DRP.
Hmm.
Also, the efforts of DOGE, which has downsized most of our federal agencies. There will be opportunities for small businesses to step in and fill those gaps that have been exposed across a lot of our agencies right now. And this was no different than where we were during COVID. I mean, we were just waiting. And there is a waiting process. I tell people, if you can get through similar to those years of those first year or two of COVID, if you can manage that and get through that, then what does your future is going to look a lot brighter. Well, what does that look like back then? Okay, what does the government need? What does the agency I'm working with need? What is their budget? And what are they looking to work on? And what are their priorities? And most importantly, what are the pain points of the folks that I'm going to be engaging with? How do I get in and find out what those opportunities are? What are their pain points? Because there are a lot now, given, again, those two things I just mentioned, those three things we just mentioned, given the chaos, given the shifting priorities and the political noise, where is that snow going to land at? And how do we now best make sure we can meet those needs for the agency that we're working in?
I love that snow globe analogy. Let me reflect back a couple of things I just heard. Federal government, the work has to get done. The
Mhm.
federal government's work requires the support of private industry, so contracting is not going to go away. This has happened before.
Yeah.
2020, snow globe, all got upset. So yes, let's some level of maybe anxiety or heightened awareness is appropriate for this time, but let's not lose our heads. And it sounds like one of the things that your or strategies you're suggesting small businesses could do right now is learn what does the government need? What does the agency I want to work with need? Budget, what are their pain points and priorities? That there's still work that can be done even while the snow hasn't settled yet. I think I heard that right. So let me ask you this question then. Uh, if someone didn't believe you, I wish they would, but if they didn't believe what you just said, that now is the time, keep, like, don't give up. What signals can they look for in the atmosphere, in the snow globe? Like, what signals would give small business owners now some confidence that there are going to be opportunities worth pursuing? Besides your word, what can they be looking for
Right.
in the general
No,
environment?
no, and that's a great question right there. And so first thing I tell people is the federal government is not going anywhere. Our Constitution and everything else is built on the federal government. Yes, this current administration may be wanting to do away with certain agencies, but at the end of the day, our federal government, those agents, the rules, what those agencies were meant to do, Congress hasn't changed those. So the federal government is still continues to run. Now we can have a debate on how efficiently or effectively that is happening right now, and that's another. But at the end of the day, this administration is working on funding the government, which has to be funded by 1 October every year. And so what I would say is, as you see right now, so there will be opportunities for small businesses to step in and fill the gaps that most of these federal agencies have occurred due to the downsizing. So there's opportunities, those skill sets that have left, and we can talk about what those skill set in those areas are. But there's also going to be opportunities for agencies like DoD,
Hmm.
DHS, especially if the budget allocations, specifically, for example, the DHS in the recent big beautiful bill, if the current levels remain at $170 billion for the DHS, that buildup, there's all kinds of opportunities in that $170 billion price that they're going to need to get things done for. And they don't have, because of, again, downsizing of the agency, others, they don't have the civil servant staff to do all of that work. Naturally, they're going to be reaching out to industry to help fill those gaps. So there's going to be opportunities on both sides to do that.
So play with me for a second, Kenny, because it
Yeah.
sounds like if I'm imagining we're having coffee or a sandwich, and I'm a small business owner. I heard what you just said. The first thing that occurs to me is, sounds like Kenny's saying I should follow the money, see how the administration is allocating budget, see what agencies are receiving that budget, and then start learning what are their priorities, what are their pain points, so I can figure out how might my organization align with those pain points and priorities. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you why. And this is a great time for small businesses to be doing that. So when I think about the major dates or how small businesses to engage, I would say to you, hey,
Yeah.
number one, you have October 1st coming up. And October 1st is the date that the federal government restarts. That's the start of the fiscal year for the federal government. And that is when most every agency is going to start planning their budgets. They're going to be planning their appropriations. What are they looking to do for the coming year? And
Hmm.
so between October 1st and the end of December, December 31st, every agency, especially it's particularly at NASA and all of our centers, we were heads down focusing on, okay, what are the priorities for the agency, and how do those bubble down to the mission directorates? And this
Yeah.
happens across every single agency in the federal government. Well, what are our priorities? But it first starts off, what is the budget line that we have? And that's what all the things you're seeing right now with the big, beautiful bill, reconciliation. What is that final number that every agency is going to have
Yeah.
to do the work that they need to do for the coming year? And that'll come on October 1st or around that date then. And so between October and December, that was the time that I was probably out in offices the most, shaking, I call it marrying, shaking hands and kissing babies. And I'd be walking around and meeting people and saying, "Hey, what are your pain points? What are you going to be doing? What are you all hearing? What are your?" And because come January 1st of every year, that's when solicitations start, and that's what's considered what we call Q2. So October 1st is the beginning of the fiscal year. October, December, January. That's Q1. Q2 is January 1st, and that's when you'll start seeing uh, solicitations start to come out. Those are to be looking to respond with RFPs until about the March time frame. So January, February, March. That 3 month period there is when you start writing solicitations, because in the third period that's when they start awarding, reviewing and making those awards for the coming year. And then you kind of do this process every year. And that's another reason why I like solicitation. I like the federal contracting, because every year you get a chance to reset. If you don't win this year, in another year, you get a chance to get it
All right,
right.
come back around.
If you do win, you get a whole year to figure out how you can improve on your solution, and you should be working with and going in there and meeting your client and hearing more of their pain points to set yourself up for the re-win or the rework. So so again, and this is where do you have the staying power to wait through these, dips and rises that we have that we're going through right now. But there is, and I think the caveat here is, and this reason why I put a big asterisk on all this is because this is an unusual time for the federal government right now. The Doge efforts, DRP has led to a huge exodus for a lot of people in the federal
Mhm.
government, and that knowledge walked out the door with them. And so now it's small businesses can now help not only the government understand what do they need to do, how to go about getting that work, but also introducing themselves saying, hey, these are our capabilities. I used to always say when I worked on site that NASA or any other contractor I worked for, they don't have the time to come and look underneath our hood. Think about when you go to buy a car, you go look at it, kick the tires, look underneath the hood.
Yeah.
And the government doesn't have time to do that. They don't know what we're doing. Even when I worked at SCSC, as much as we marketed and put our stuff out there, NASA had no idea what we were doing. It was my job to go in there and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what your pain points are. This is how we can address that in a different way than maybe you have been getting that work done. It may be a different mode of doing business. It may be new technologies, but that's what the government is looking for industry to do, is to help them to solve their problems in a better way using what is out there right now. There's no one in the government watching that new technology, watching what new processes, watching how agile can help them do their work better. How can they implement it? All these ways. So this is where an industry can help the government in a lot of ways do this kind of work in the future.
I really want to underline that point you're making here is that federal government civil servants are very capable and have a tremendous amount of work, so much so that they can't necessarily see what's coming down the pike or what's on the horizon for new technologies, new ways of doing business. So it's really important for small business owners to remember, hey, I need to not only know what my potential client stakeholder needs, I need to educate them about how I can help them with that need or how this tool or this process that's out here that I can help them implement can help them address their needs. It sounds like you need to have a constant conversation because their heads are down, focused on getting the work done, serving the American public, not necessarily looking to see what new way of doing business or tool can help our agency complete this function. Am I hearing that right?
You're absolutely right on that. And this even plays into more so after you win work and you're going for that rework or you're looking to re-win the work that you just done. How do you again? You showed them this one thing, but are you going to give them the same thing over again, or can you do it better? But again, you're right. Their heads are down trying to make, and even now with the new leadership we have in, they're just trying to figure out, okay, what is my agency doing? What does my org chart look like? And so they don't necessarily have the time to make sure the work is being done right, or if there's other ways to do the work than what they historically know. Again, they're coming in, the folks who stayed in the government and just picking up from what the last people did at best. And there wasn't this knowledge turnover, this knowledge transfer that typically happens when people leave an organization. That didn't happen with this last time. And so that's why we are at a crossroads, and I think we can definitely overcome, but I think that's where small businesses can really step up their game and fill these gaps and be in there, letting the industry know or letting the government know what industry can do for them.
So let's talk about this. Let's give these small business owners interested in federal contracting some advice. And
Okay.
I want to sort of focus on three buckets. You've already started with this first bucket around how do you show value so you can win the work. And then I'd like to also talk about how, like, can they re-win work? Once you have a relationship, once you're in the contracting process, how might you keep your organization well positioned to win the next iteration of that contract? Can you give some specific things um, that small businesses can do? I'll help you with the first one. I'll prompt you with the first one. You talked about how it's important, particularly between this period of, let's say, October 1 to January 1, to really learn the pain points, the priorities of an agency. How do you do that? If I do not have a current contract vehicle with a federal agency, how do I find out what they care about or what's important to them? And if I do have a relationship, again, what do I do or say to get that data around what they need and what their priorities are?
So that's the $1 million question. And one of the things that I used to always say to my teams that work for me, my clients, I'm not here to I'm not here to win tasks. I'm not here to build projects or programs. I'm here to build trust and to win relationships. And that's what you're doing. Contracting is a long game. It is. Because everyone out there, I always say there's 3 or 4 people out there that can do the same work that you can do. What you're trying to resonate is, hey, when something goes wrong, and we all think that everything is going to go right all the time, but when something goes wrong, who is going to be there to help you through this problem, to walk you through this? And that starts with building relationships. And it doesn't, one of the things that I would always kind of go back and forth with my leadership on is the money to go down to NASA to walk the hallways, to go in and meet people, to go in and have a cup of coffee. It's not about every time you go in and meet with a client, it's not always going to end up with a task order or work to come out of it. But what you're doing is sitting down and talking with them, saying, hey, what is your pain point? And you'd be amazed at how many people, especially in the federal government, would love to have a cup of coffee. They drink coffee all the time. But it starts with those basic human connections. And I think the more that we try to farm that out to AI, you're missing the personal relationships that you need to establish. That's why I think it's prime now for small businesses to get into the federal government, because you're at the same playing field as most of the incumbents who have been in. And those have now been, because the government's looking for new ways to do work. And that's your chance to step up and say, hey, I know you need human resource work. I know you need staff support work. We have the right staff. We have these capabilities. But also we provide these capabilities, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's AI, whether it's training, whether it's leadership development. These are all skills that the federal government is going to need because they don't have those in sight. So they typically farm those out to industry to help them bring that immediate knowledge to bear. So if you're in a DevSecOps, if you're in an area where you know air traffic control, that you know the government is going to need help, you're already better positioned. Now it's just going in, reaching out to that agency and making those connections. And yes, you're going to get the door probably shut in your face more than you think because they don't know who you are. But part of that is again, you're not trying to win a task order. You're trying to win trust and you're trying to build a relationship. And it's going and think about how you build a relationship. It is back and forth. You're not just asking them for something at the first one. You're saying, hey, I'm here to let you know who I am. And that's why I said I would also caution small business right now to figure out what your capabilities, your knowledge, your skills and abilities are right now. This is a great chance for all of us to reset and say, okay, I was doing this. My contract got canceled. What can I do now that I know the government is still going to need work on? October 1st, every agency is going to have their budgets. You can look online and do a little research, see what that budget was last year, where the areas were cut or not funded. And those are now opportunities for you to go in, for any small business to go in and say, hey, I know you all don't have this skill set here, but we can still do this for you all. And this is how we would do it. And we're still aligned with the federal government. We're still aligned with your mission. And again, they may not have a task order for you right there, but that relationship is started now. And when they do think of the work that they need, that they will think of you. And that's a constant communication. That's a constant cycle, even more so when you win. Because I think the hardest thing for me as an incumbent every year was re-winning work and re-showing why, again, they shouldn't choose the cheapest option, but stay with us. And what are those skill sets that either with the team, if I had staff support, working throughout the year to make sure my staff was in tune with the mission that they were supporting, make sure they had the right skill set. There's training and professional development that needs to come, but then also learning about that mission. I mean, you're growing with them. You're growing with the federal government. Their pain points are your pain points. And once they see that relationship forming, then you can help to shape task orders going forward.
I really appreciate how you're reframing my thinking around federal contracting from it's being a short term, I want to win to long term, I'm building a relationship. And I think playing the longer game, I think would change my behavior, perhaps the behavior of other small business owners around sharing what they can do to help, listening to what the priorities, the needs, even the complaints, because something we've noticed is people only complain about something if they care about something. So like
Yep.
getting underneath that complaint, what do they care about? I want to ask you a very particular thing you mentioned once in a previous conversation with me around RFPs. When you're responding to a request for proposal, you talked about how in your proposal, it might be helpful to include some language around, and you mentioned this a second ago, what will happen when things go wrong? How I, as someone who you may not know well, my organization as an organization you don't know well, pardon, what we will do if something goes wrong in the course of executing this contract should we win. Could you talk a little bit about like, is it advisable to put some language in the proposal around, I don't know if we call it a guarantee or like a personal organizational commitment? Is that helpful, do you think?
No, I used to always, you said personal guarantee. Um, and that's something I used to always call, that's the above and beyond. When you look at everything that happens, and I do risk management from a project manager. So I always hear people, oh, it's always going to go right. It's always going to work out the way it is. And I'm always sitting in the back going, because we all think, for anyone that actually does work for the federal government, it's not always going to go the way you expect it to. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be rework. And so how do you best respond to that and letting your customer know that, hey, I'm going to be there and writing that in a proposal so they can see that. Because most people miss that part. They always write to, hey, this is all going to go great. And all of our stuff is always going to meet the mail. And again, but a lot of the people when the federal government is writing these contracts, they don't know what they want. A lot of them are poorly written. They don't have a lot of what they actually need. And once you win the work, then becomes a lot of but this, and that's the above and beyond. If you can write to, hey, we are flexible, we're willing to work with you, we will go along with you. We may not even meet all of your goals for this year, but that's where the rework comes in. If we don't get to it, this is how we can help you to do that. And I think it's just a critical point where so much knowledge leaving, you're going to have a lot of young federal civil servants now having to make these decisions about what's the best solution. And again, they are going to be looking at it, well, everything's going to be working out. But to have in your proposal and your response, hey, if things don't work out, this is how we're going to manage it. This is how we're going to fix it. This is how we're going to be there with you. That's a above and beyond, and that's a game changer right there. Because most contracts don't ask for that in an RFP, and that's what the above and beyond is, letting them know that. Go.
Makes sense to me. And I'm adding that to the list of do's that you've been providing us. Like, do create a relationship, do build that relationship, do keep communicating with your potential customer stakeholder or your contracted customer stakeholder if you do win. Do share best practices from industry that are being developed that they may not know about. Share innovations. Give them historical context if they're new to their position in that agency because of recent retirings. I love that list of do's. Can we talk about don'ts for a minute?
Yes. Yes.
What are some of the things that you've seen small business owners do that really undermine their ability to either build those relationships, win the work, or deliver on their promises? What are some of the don'ts that we could avoid?
I would say the one of the main ones that comes to mind is saying, yeah, deal with what's in front of you and not what you want it to be. And I say that even when it comes to the work. Again, there's a lot of, you're dealing with new customers. They want you, and they may not be able to communicate effectively what their problem is, but deal with that and help them to deal with that initial problem, not what you want it to be. Hey, this is what I think you probably need, because then it shows them that
Listening.
they're not being heard.
Yeah.
And that's a critical thing, especially when you're dealing with new people. And most of the folks in the federal government, contracting isn't there unless they're a contracting officer or they aren't. Contracting isn't their first job. It's their second job, either as a core or the person that's writing the proposal. That's not their first job. And so our job is to help them
Yeah.
to do that. Go ahead,
Let
please.
me, I want you to say that again and because I want to make sure the people in the back heard it. Say it again and also define what core means.
So core is the contracting officer's representative, and that's who you will be dealing with. Every small business will be dealing with the contracting officer representative because they're the ones who write out the actual requirements, what needs to be done. The CO or the contracting officer just make sure the funding is there. And they once the contracting and make sure all the T's are dotted, I's, but they don't know anything about the work that's being done. That's where so there's a dual relationship there, understanding what your contracting officer needs, what information that they need, rates, making sure those rates are aligned with what the government, but then your contracting officer representative, that's where you're going to be getting the work from and making sure you know how their response is, what kind of work they're looking for, what are those technologies and tools, capabilities that they may be thinking of, any novel approaches that you may have that they haven't heard of or thought about yet. That's where you want to communicate. That's where you want to communicate that and have those conversations with, because they can let you know what other teams are on the work,
Yeah.
what other words. So there's a there, but it's just again, deal with what's in front of you and not give them all these things that they can't use. And that's one of the things where I would always say it may be a sexy technology and industry, but does the federal government need it? And can they implement it? Like, can they bring it on? Again, the federal government, again, you're dealing with a lot of legacy systems. And I know you may think that this is really sexy tool, but can it tie back into what the government already is using? Because they're not going to wholesale up up to do the government and just go into a new system. It's very hard to do that. And so that's why I say for most small businesses, making sure your solutions, your technologies align with what the government or what that agency is already doing. And
Kenny, I have to say, I am today years old when I learned what you just said there about that the folks on the federal side who are doing this contracting, this may be their second job, not their
yeah.
primary or first job. So I think that's a really important message for our audience to hear that these folks are busy and distracted by probably two jobs, not just one.
Mhm.
So I want to wrap things up. So I have just one final question, Kenny.
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
given a lot of advice around how to small business, how one, this time is an opportunity. They should lean in, not lean back and wait. Two, about how they should have the longer view, the relationship oriented view versus the I want to win a contract view, and that use that to guide their actions around learning what their clients need, following the money, showing the client how what they are doing, communicating that on a constant basis.
Yeah.
But if you had to pick one thing, if we're in the elevator and I said, Kenny, help me. But you know, we only have 4 floors before I have to get off. What's one thing you might say to me about what I could be doing right now, entering as we approach October 1 of 2025 to be ready for 2026 federal contracting?
So that's a two-part question. For one, I would say internally, do you have the right skill sets, capabilities, and more importantly, the staff to do
Mm,
the work that you're going to look to perform? I can't tell you how many times a company was awarded work and then had to go out and find the people to do the work that they had wrote to. So that's a big thing because people, again, it's expensive to keep people on your retainer. I get that. And there is an investment that you're making even when it goes down to having those conversations, having those cups of coffee.
yeah.
There is an investment there. And sometimes, again, it's well, what is that return on my investment? Did we get a task order? Did we get a proposal? Again, that's the long-term view and it may not happen that way, but you did make a relationship. You did get a name. You did get an email. They know who you are. So when they do see your name on that proposal, oh, this person does know what they're talking about. They have talked to me. They are writing in that response to my pain points, even if the requirements don't necessarily reflect that. So that's one there. And then on the other side, I would say, are you aligned to the agency that you're going after? A lot of times when people here go after the money, that's great. That's where the DHS, Customs and Border Patrol, may be getting this huge influx and $170 billion worth of resources coming forward. But is your small businesses aligned to what their mission is? Because they're going to quickly see that if you can't write to that in your response, or and if you happen to write to it in your response and don't have it and can't perform the work
Yeah.
adequately, that's going to be another strike against you. And so that's why I say that's a two-part. So make sure your capabilities are set and you're working in the right agency. Uh,
I love that. Know yourself, capabilities, ability to scale, and make sure you're aligned with an appropriate agency. Don't just necessarily chase every opportunity, but be focused.
yeah.
Kenny, I can't thank you enough for your time, for sharing your experience, for sharing your wisdom, and for our viewers. If you liked what you heard Kenny McCombs say about federal contracting at this point of time, 2025 entering 2026, look at our other Perspectives in Practice interviews available from the Break the Norm Leadership website and from our YouTube channel. I hope this has been worth your time and attention. I certainly have learned a lot, and I hope that all of you have a great and a smooth day.
And
Until
thank you
next
so
time.
much for this opportunity as well. I mean,
Oh, absolutely, Kenny. You're most welcome.
appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Absolutely.